Hello, gang. Welcome. Just gonna do some more painting on this weirdo thing. Hopefully get it done tonight. And I will be starting a new project here on stream on Twitch pretty shortly. I'm planning to start it next week. Should be pretty interesting. Hopefully I'll be around. If y'all have any questions or anything like that, feel free to ask. I'm always up to chat. I'm one of those folks that can chat and paint at the same time for the most part. Been teaching a long time. Kind of developed a skill to blabber as you go. Oh no. I'll have to pause for just a moment. Give me 1 minute. I have to completely restart Photoshop. OpenGL is not working right now, so this will take just 1 second. For a moment, enjoy a little bit of goofy painting. I'll be right back. Return! Huzzah! I had to shut down Photoshop and restart it. It's an error that sometimes happens if you're running a bunch of other programs. Like I've had this file open pretty much all day, and I've been running other programs like working on the laying out the stream and a lot of other things that are pretty GPU heavy. And every now and then, I don't know if it happens on everybody's machine, but on mine it does get a little bit squirrely. And one of the things that really depends on the OpenGL GPU processing for Photoshop, outside of just like tons of layers and things like that, is that rotate tool, which is something I use all the time if you follow regularly. And I basically can't operate without it. I use it all the time. Usually a simple restart of Photoshop will solve that particular problem. No sweat. No perspiration. I'm trying to keep this still fairly loose. I don't want to do like a super tight rendering, so it's going to be a lot of kind of splashing color around here and there. Keeping it as rough as I can while still kind of capturing the different surfaces and making sure everything's lit correctly. Quick hand gesture stuff. I've gotten wildly hooked on seltzer water. I used to drink shit tons of soda when I was younger. I've kind of lost the taste in my old age. And now I go through quite a bit of just soda water. Flavored soda water. I can't go in for just a plain soda water myself. Seems weird. I do like bubbles though. Bubbles. I'm gonna separate this finger, get a little bit of opening in the hands. It's important when you're doing your gestures for hands to try and show variety with how you arrange the fingers. If they all kind of go the same way, they can look a little bit stiff and off. It's not sexy. I want to hint at some nice bright and vivid subsurface scattering here without doing too much. So just little hints. Doesn't take much. I do imagine watching me flip the canvas around pretty willy-nilly can sometimes make some people a little seasick. But I've gotten so used to it over the years. Glancing at my navigator just to double check the composition from far away, and I noticed this. There was a very strong contrast here that I didn't want with that bit of forearm there. Thanks for the follow, Cardboard Box TV. If you're new, I'm just getting started with this. I'm kind of expanding my teaching online. I teach painting through Gumroad and Patreon traditionally, and I just wanted to reach out to more people, you know, grow the community a little bit. We've got a very ratatouille philosophy about painting, in which I kind of think anybody can learn to paint, given the right logic to apply. There's a lot of formula to how light behaves with form, and once you kind of master those things, you can do quite a bit visually. I'm gonna imply shadows from the tentacles here, from the creature, even though the tentacles aren't there yet, and I'll get to them later, but this kind of underpainting helps so you don't have to go back and fix things later. Just sort of a little preemptive strike. Strawberry. Just using a liner now to kind of carve out hinted overlap, ambient occlusion. Gonna do my little bright hue line trick that I've done up here on this hand. I know that there's gonna be some strong, actually I'm gonna paint in the shadows that the effect is gonna lay over first. Like I said with the shadows for the tentacles, putting down stuff underneath so that you don't have to paint back into it is always a smart plan. By painting smart and layering things in the right order, you spend a lot less time redoing things, which is one of the biggest things that will slow you down as a painter, designer, whatever. It just takes so much time. Kind of want to hint at like some folds being pressed down with this pair of hands in the lap. For those of you that haven't seen, I'm painting a character I painted a while ago for a class. This was for a photo bashing class that I did for my patrons, and it's this just weird ass figure that I thought would be fun to paint in kind of a sergeant way. So I have her, and then I'm mixing her with another creature I painted a while ago. I think this was just for fun. I'm not sure if that was for a class or not. In fact, I may have even painted it on Twitch. And then I'm kind of doing a sergeant version of this creepy death goddess thing. I don't know what it is. It's just an interesting thing to experiment with. For now, I'm just kind of familiarizing myself with kind of the geography and the system of Twitch, and just getting used to that with these studies, and you know, just painting because I like to paint, and I like to paint weird shit that makes me laugh. But the goal will be, in the next week or two, I'll be sharing a project that we're all going to do together on here, which will be really cool. I'm super excited to get going on that with you guys. I'm trying to build up all around, all at the same time. I want to build up to my focal point, which will be her hand being fed to this dog creature. So that means just kind of detailing loosely and just adding a little bit here and there, building around the figure, building around the picture plane so that everything kind of comes together and nothing feels underpainted, which is super important, again, for saving time. In essence, I'm doing the minimum amount of effort necessary. My laziness is profound. Flipping, always flip. I'm looking at my navigator over here, this little thumbnail, and I'm looking at the full size, looking back and forth, kind of measuring where lights are popping. I'm looking for things that stand out, like this bright spot right here, kind of, it just suddenly, it's just like a single stroke, it's just a little extra bright, so I kind of want to ease that transition. Kind of hint maybe at the color elsewhere. I'm going to use my my palette up here, and I'm going to alter the hue. Let's see if this works. No, it's not working for me today. Oh, there we go. Switch out the hue. blowing up suddenly. It's always a scary thing. Alright, let's work on our creature again a little bit more. If I remember right, he had little black legs, little creepy, blood-covered, pointy, chitinous, spooky stuff. You can always do a little bit of design on top. Why not? Can't hurt nothing. Hey, thanks for following by Baby Bird. Bye bye bird? Baby Bird. I'm gonna go with Baby Bird. Thanks so much. Welcome. Let's get rid of our ref real quick. Knock all of this back a little. Smooth that transition just a tad so that the hands kind of pop in that area. But I'm going to test. I'm going to make a new layer and test to knock those hands back a little bit, because right now I've let them get a little out of hand. Ha! Ha! Anyway, if we look at the thumbnail, you can see that my focal point was intended to be this join where the creature is being fed her hand, this fourth hand here. And so all of my bright spots, all of my colors, all of my details should kind of coalesce around that focal points, because it's the focal point. So you want all these different aspects to come together that are going to promote that as something that's worthy of looking at for more time. But I've created a really strong contrast here between the lightness of these hands and the dress, which is unfortunately taking away from my focal point currently. So I'm gonna just knock that back just a tad, just a touch. Don't want it to be I want to darken it, but I don't want to lose the vividness of the saturation, the hue. So I'm going to try to do a soft light instead. Too saturated. So basically glazing, like if I was using acrylics or oils, this would be a glaze I'm doing. And it's a technique I use a lot digitally. It's a huge chunk. At least 50-60% of how I paint digitally is completely informed by learning originally to paint traditionally. I think it's unfortunately kind of a dying skill for a lot of young concept artists and illustrators coming up. They just go straight to digital and they never have to learn some of these techniques for controlling color and value. And I think it's pretty invaluable stuff. I'm also kind of using it now to unify an overall color key, which is kind of impinkening everything a little bit. That's a word I like. It's giving it a little more richness and saturation throughout the figure. Turn it off and turn it on. Let's look at our thumbnail to see how. Yeah, see that? How it kind of knocks back the brightness of those extra hands down there, so that they don't kind of stand out as much. Yeah, and it makes now the head of the creature and the hand being inserted into its tentacle mass a little bit more of a focal point. So, goal achieved. New layer. Let's continue painting. Get back in it. No, wait, 1 second. Going back to the last layer. I want to get a little bit of that richness in this other hand, which is feeling a little bit dull and colorless. That can be the downside of working on figures and creatures that are especially saturated or vivid in color, is that sometimes there can be so much color that it actually makes the parts that you would like to be colorful look less colorful. So too much of something can actually kill that thing. A lot of back and forth with this stuff. A lot. Get in there, get his little creepy eyes going on. Now we're going to really kind of dig in here and spend some time figuring out this writhing mass of tentacles, how it's going to wrap around, how it's going to dig into the flesh, and how graphic I want to go with that. I don't think it needs to be super graphic. There's going to be something that's inherently unsettling with just the implications there. So we don't need to go super detailed, I don't think. But I do need to figure everything out, get it mapped. So, and I need to get this face, the face of this critter to feel a little bit more like my original illustration, where he's a little less cute and fluffy and more like cute creepy, if there is such a thing. Hashtag cute creepy, creepy cute. I could do, you know, those dogs that, like those little white dogs, and get those little tear stains and things like that. We could do something like that that would make it kind of unsettling. I am still painting in the soft light layer, actually. I'm basically detailing right now, but with a glaze. I'm gonna apply some of the depth in the fur, a little bit of that fluffiness. I want to apply pressure of the fingers kind of pushing into this plush of the fur, which means that I need form shadows as the pillowiness, the marshmallow head aspect kind of divots in where the finger's pushing. So I need a shadow side and a light side. And they all have to adhere to those first 3 rules of light from my first episode on YouTube. The cool thing about that is when you're working with something that has sort of a noisome texture like fur, is that you can, it's a really easy kind of gimmick effect to cut into those little shadows and cut into the light and imply all of the little textures that show us that it's hair, because all of that's going to happen as the form turns away from the light source. So we're going to an opaque layer. That was all done here in our soft light layer. Now I'm using a little texture brush. You could do this even with just a small round and just do it repeatedly. Just do a little hatching and imply the fluff. And you want the fluff to kind of come out. This would happen with grass too. Overlapping of forms, you want the fluff to kind of overlap the shadow and overlap the element putting pressure into it or occupying that space. and it gives it that feeling of push. So let's turn that stuff off, and see how right now it looks almost kind of like plastic. It's those little hints that continually call back to the material that you're trying to represent and imply with little bits of implication. And the more you do it, all those little hints, they start to add up and start to feel more natural, more and more natural, even though nothing about it is natural. So long as the hints obey the rules of the material that you're working on, and they obey the rule of light and the rule of the form, it's going to look right. It'll feel right. So I need an undulation here because this is a spot where the light's going to hit flat onto some mats of fur. See how, so the top of the cranium here of this creature is rounding out, and then I'm kind of bunching skin up behind it and using the fur changing angle to the light source in order to create the effect that shows the behavior of the underlying flesh. Speculars, cheap and easy. I want speculars elsewhere on this creature, but I don't want them to draw too much attention and take away from the focal point I've established. So I'm not going to use the same value of light color that I use to light the little forelimb stabby bits. I'm going to pick something else that's a little bit more in keeping with the color and value key that I have back here, so I can imply those little jumps in value that hint at speculars, but also not break the value key that I've established back here. Hey, welcome Toyina. It's good to see you on. You're up painting late, huh? Yeah, this painting's been niggling at the back of my head. I gotta finish this thing so I can get on to the next project. I think it's just entertaining enough to make me want to finish it, you know? What are you painting on, my man? Client work? I think I need some kind of mass here. Maybe some of the skirt needs to come over here to change the darkness out a little bit. I don't want to break the value key too much. I just want a little bit, again, to hint that the pressure of this thing is sitting on something, you know? This is a great place to allow lost and found to happen, you know, through loose and rough brush strokes and, you know, kind of pooling your values together to prevent over rendering, because it's that mystery, it's the subtlety in those things, that the implied forms that really kind of can draw a viewer's eye and trap them in your painting, which is really the goal of every painter. Of course you want people to look at your painting, right? It's obvious. I want to make the head more fluffy. It's not fluffy enough. Let's see. We'll make a new layer and test it out and see if we can pull this off. It's quite bright. Bright, bright, bright. Let's get some kind of... move that ear maybe so we can have a little bit more head mass. Again, we're picking up now the brights of the indent of the finger in the fur. See? You don't need to do all of that with a texture brush. Just enough to hint at the texture is sufficient. And then you do the rest by actually filling and putting opaque paint over it. It's all about putting the right color and the right value in the right spot. Which is easier said than done, of course. Yeah, that's looking much more fluffy and hair. See? Like here it's still looking very plasticky. It's enough, but we got to take it to that next level because this is our focal point. This is the part where it's really going to be popping. Always checking back here to make sure I'm not breaking out of my value key too much. Of course, the goal here is to break because I'm spotlighting this little area, which is my focal point. But we've got to be careful. It's so easy to get stuck in render mode where you're just tunnel visioning on your illustration, and you'll lose track of where you are and how much value you're actually altering. So having something up next to your screen like this, you know, with the navigator is so great. That's why I love having it open all the time, is so I can just check and make sure that I'm not completely busting everything. Because let's say I'm painting, right, and I'm having a good time, and I'm like, okay, well, this is all facing towards the light. Cool, cool, cool. This is fun. I'm rendering. And then I start rendering down in here. Well, I've broken my value key, and I've made the light change direction, or I'm making that fur pop out too much. It's just too much. So if you monitor what's going on over there, you can control your values. See, the textures I added weren't wrong. They didn't detract from the creature. It was the values that were misbehaving. So by going and grabbing some, or not, by erasing out rather, and getting rid of some of that brightness, I can keep the texture and nothing's lost because it's living in the value key correctly. You want that harmony with the value key. You have to have that harmony. And I really want to make this mouth super gross. Let's grab these eyes and see if we can make them grosser. Love my job, guys. Yeah, that was the right choice. Okay, so this mouth, it's got to be kind of a, I don't know. I wanted to distort enough to imply the massive tentacles kind of moving left and pushing the meat of the face kind of to the left side of its head. But I also want to keep the overall anatomy that I've established with this weird critter. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be a bit of back and forth because I only have the one drawing of it. I don't even know what it really is. I have no idea what it is, but we'll know when we get there. We'll know when it's right. But that's the thought process there. So I'm going to kind of see if I can squelch those lips up into the arm a little bit. Yeah. But I don't want it to give him a ducky face. That's kind of what I've been worrying about. Maybe more tentacle massing. Oh, maybe that's what I need to do. It's just tentacles coming from the top. No. Up the saturation like crazy here. Don't normally paint that zoomed in. It's not a good idea to paint super zoomed in because you're going to end up getting that tunnel vision I was talking about. Hey, Wrecker Havoc. Welcome. So I'm just going to hatch in the lights here because I don't want to over render with changing the value too much because at this point a lot of this is going to be sopping with blood and weird stuff, so it's just going to be like Speculars that's going to make it pop. Do I have some art for sale? I have so much art for sale. I have an in-print page. I think I even have this guy for sale right here. You should buy him and keep him in your bathroom. Yeah. So this is like, yeah, it's got that kind of Muppety feel. but it's wrong. That's what I do. That's who I am. So now I apply my speculars. Less is more with speculars. You really don't need to do a ton. Just want to make sure that you're hinting the direction of the light and hinting at the form of the lit object. You should absolutely quote RoboCop. I welcome it at all times. Gonna kind of make it a little layered. It needs to be unsettling in all of the ways. One thing that I've noticed that works quite well is to kind of hint that masses of flesh are laying on top of other masses of flesh. That's always a win. So what we're gonna do is add these highlights that are going to sell the idea that this little flap of lip is like resting on top of tentacles, and then we're going to paint in the tentacles. Regarding not zooming in, what if you're doing a portrait? You need to get the details in part of the piece, like the eyes. It's fine to zoom in to do details. The problem is staying zoomed in. So you always want to back out, check it, make sure that you haven't broken any value keys. In particular, value keys are the most important thing to manage when you're doing this kind of detailing. So I don't want to over render the surfaces of the tentacles, because if I give too much mid-tone values to them, they'll end up looking more matte rather than shiny, and I need them to be shiny and horrible because it's what I do. Now here is where we get our payoff from painting the shadows in there earlier. apply some more. So there's a million value keys in a painting that you're trying to control, and then the overall painting has a value key that needs to be controlled too. Exactly. That's exactly it. So you know, when you're thinking about it, you want to think about the whole picture plane as a value key, right? So there's the value key of you know, like if you were to take a shot, any shot from a great movie, like that's got really good cinematography, you would take that shot and you could look at it and say, oh, this is a dark key, a light key, or a low key, or a high key, mid-tone, high contrast key. Once you've established that, then all of the different elements that make up the composition are also subject to keys, and each one has sub-keys. And each object that's lit, let's say that you have a mid-key or a high-key image, which so it's very light in color. Let's say you've got a photo of a sphere floating in the middle of a snowfield, right? So all the light is pretty light, like your values are going to be up in the bright section. But then that sphere, when you're showing that, not only does it have the key of the sphere as a whole, then you have a key for the light side and the dark side, and on and on and on and on. So keying from keying the field all the way down to managing the key of your accent values at the end is all about management and making sure that all of these things live within each other correctly. It's a nesting doll system. The greater key, every new key that you introduce cannot break the greater key. Does that make sense? So as you're painting and as you get deeper and deeper into the weeds, you must follow and adhere to the next highest up key. And it's one of those things that you don't think about, but once you kind of unlock it, makes things a lot easier for you to manage. Because then it works in the opposite direction too, in that it sounds like a lot of work where you have to manage all of these things. But if you understand the rules that the management must follow, then you can also use it to check your work and go back. So it ultimately makes things a lot easier for you as you're painting. There's something about this thumb that feels wrong. I'm not sure what it is. Could be the angle of the thumbnail that I've painted on it. Could be the overall mass. I don't know. Sometimes that happens. I mean, I've painted this whole thing without reference, so I don't really have anything to go off of. Yeah, I hope you find that useful, Toyina. There's a whole lesson. It's one of the very early ones called Keying the Field. I really recommend that one if you want advice on how to practice managing your keys and how to think about them. It's a good lesson. Those first ones are super important for managing the overall value system. Doing your materials, this information also stacks. So the things that you learn from the very first episode that's free on YouTube will teach you the function and the basic rules of how light works. Then as we go deeper into it, I teach you about how the values overall will work in relationship to the light that we've already established. And then we get into materials. So how materials behave is very, very nested in controlling your value keys. In fact, really, painting materials is all about how to work with the values that you have available to you within a key, but also the times when you're supposed to break those rules, because that's how you know what a material is different materials behave with the rules of a value key in different ways. time, 7. I think I got about 30 more minutes, and then I'm gonna go play some Call of Duty with the fellas. I just wanted to see if I could get a little bit more done on this thing. This is something I do a lot. I'll do a painting like this, and then I get really caught up in the focal points and in all the sexy juicy bits that are the fun parts, and then I totally forget about things like furniture and background things. So it's a good idea to just stop noodling on the fun stuff every now and then and check out where you are with your background stuff to make sure that it doesn't completely break. I want some of these goldy greeny colors I'm establishing in the critter. I mean, it's fantasy furniture too, so why not, right? You don't need to do much with your rendering of these background things. You just need to get them up to the level that they look like they're loved on enough, as loved on as the rest. It just needs to look like it. I mean, especially with this, with something like I'm doing here, which is meant to be kind of a very rough, sketchy, parlor style portrait. You can get away with so much implication. So just implying things, I don't need to get in there and really over render anything here. I'm thinking I might want to make this a more satiny finish. Just a challenge. I like to, even for things that aren't of great import in my paintings, you know, like this couch it's just not really an important feature, but it's there, and it's helping to kind of tell the story of how mundane this very weird situation is. Whenever I include things like this in the background, which are elemental but not super important, I just try to come up with a real quick, simple story of it that supports the world building that I've established. So you can tell that in lots of ways. You can tell that with the material, you can tell that with aging and stressing, like how beat up something is. You can imply really simple stories with objects and props that are not your focal point at all, and it's worthwhile to invest the time to do that, because they will always aid the greater story of the narrative of the image overall. It's never time that's wasted or lost to dump in there just a little bit. think I'm going to lean really hard on this velvety, satiny look. Velvet and satin are really hard to paint because, as I established with my comments earlier, the material recipes that you learn to paint are all about how you should already know the basic rules of light, the essential primary rules of light, the basic rules of form, the basic rules of managing and controlling your value key, and then the recipes for these materials will exist almost entirely by breaking those rules and how they break them. And chrome, satin, velvet, they behave very strangely with light. Really, really weird. And it can be tough. But if once you learn how to observe what is happening and understand why it's happening, it actually becomes quite simple with a bit of practice and just that awareness of the logic at hand. It's all a logic game. If this, then that, right? I'll give you a hint for those of you that haven't checked out any of the classes yet, but you'll notice that I'm lighting this wood, or whatever this is meant to be. Maybe it's, I don't know. Yeah, let's stick with wood. I'm lighting this wood on the opposite side of the satin. Might as well lean into that wood thing all the way. Excuse me. All right, that's enough. I think that's more than enough to hint that there's been love given to this unloved part. So now we can go back. We can basically ignore that couch for the rest of this painting. Maybe I can go in and do a little bit more of fill light stuff, like some cool fill lights and bounce lights. But none of that's going to really be rendering. It's just going to be mapping out and adding little hints of colors within the value keys that I already have established. Now I can really just focus on making this as gruesome as possible. All the hard work's been done. Now it's just the fun, goofy, silly shit. And this is, again, this is where a lot of the speed can come from. I'm always harping on about how to get faster. And it's not because I think that you need to be fast at painting, but it's because I think that you need to spend the time making the mistakes so that you can get better and better to where you want to be. And the way to make those mistakes is to do lots and lots of painting. And if you're sitting there just rendering on one thing all the time, it's going to slow you way down. It's going to slow down your progress. It's going to slow down that image. It's way better to fail hard and fail fast than to do it really, really achingly slowly. Okay, now I really need this to be blood now. This is no longer sufficient, this orange goopiness. What games are you guys playing these days? Y'all picked up that Ghost of Tsushima yet? I am after that. I'm so ready to get on that one. But I got the Xbox PC Game Pass thing, which is sort of like a subscription. It's almost like Netflix, where you don't own the games, you just get to like license them for a little while. And I'm playing this new Obsidian one, Grounded, which is like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but video game survival game. And it's so gorgeous. I can't stop. I'm totally hooked on that. Okay. So I've got some reds. Now I gotta knock them down because that shit's absurd. Grab that bluish color down there. Great tentacles are all about overlap. Overlap and getting the relationship of those squidgy noodles sticking together, wrapping around each other. That kind of animation aspect to it is really what makes tentacles work. And I enjoy figuring that out and kind of just accidentally falling into these little shapes and these little overlaps that work. It's kind of a poetry in it that I think keeps bringing me back to them. If you would like to hear the story of why I think I paint so many tentacles, check out the last episode. It's all archived on YouTube at youtube.com/Izzy Medrano. And you can watch all the old episodes up there. And all of the stories that I tell and weird shit like that. Okay, so just like the tentacles and just like all the other materials I was just talking about, I need this blood to definitely feel like blood. And right now it just feels like kind of a dye on the skin. Soft light also. Pick up that red. I want to hint at that ruddiness in all of these parts where the slurping is happening. These little splatters that I'm doing will also help kind of, as I'm drawing them kind of cross contour over the fur, they're helping me describe the form of the fluff of the head too. So when you're painting, you want to think about ways that you can get twofers like this, you know? It'll describe the narrative that I'm kind of implying here, and it'll help me with the painting overall, the drawing of it. New layer. I want to get rid of this bottom jaw bit. I don't like any of that. You see here, Toyina, where I'm rendering in the dark side and adding lights, but they're living within the value key of that whole area, so I haven't actually changed anything except for minor details. Oh, thanks for watching, Schmoove It. You're always welcome. Yeah, we'll be wrapping this up in a few minutes, but my plan is to do... I'm hoping to do more streaming in general. I don't really have a plan for a schedule just yet. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Are these just rando streams worthwhile, or should I try and stick more to a schedule? Is that better for you? What do you think? I'm definitely going to be streaming more either way. I think it's going to be the way to go with this whole thing. Because I like painting what I like to paint, and it's cool to share it. Not that the world needs tentacled Pomeranians and booby monsters. I don't know. It just does, okay? Think a schedule would benefit the growth on Twitch? Yeah. So maybe a little bit of both, like just add an extra scheduled day every week and then also just do randos when I get a wild hair. That's a good idea. I'll have to think about what days would work for an actual schedule, a more regular schedule. Yeah. Double checking my thumbnail there. I think the values are working pretty well overall, but we really need the visual noise now of the speculars on the tentacles. But I think I'm going to save that for next time because we are just now running out of time. I'm going to save. Thank you all for joining me for that little quickie, and I'll figure out a schedule and get you all updated on that, and then of course I'll be doing randos as I go. Thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed yourselves. As always, paint smart, paint sexy. Hi there. I'm Izzy, a professional writer, concept artist, and illustrator. I've taught painting for a dozen years or so, on and offline. Many of your favorite illustrators and designers have studied with me or under me and have gone on to teach in their own right. You're here because, like they did, you want to learn to paint realistically for illustration or concept art. Well, worry not. You're in the right place. Grab a seat. I want you to join me as I explain all the aspects of image making in extremely digestible and clear monthly lessons. Not through the lens of silly how to paint hair or eye demos. That shit is carnival tricks. And you're not really learning anything except an exact way to render one thing in one manner. This is painting mysticism at its worst. Watching these kinds of exploitative lessons won't help you level up with your understanding. Sure, now you can paint sparkly hair, but what if you want to paint a dragon, or figure out how to render a sea of fire, or depict a one-eyed transgender space marine dying in the vacuum of space? Painting and image making are tools of communication, and can be learned by anyone willing to put in some time. Like grammar is for language, light, color, and form literally follow a formula. Painting well is not a matter of chicken bones, zombie crackers, and the ever-dismissive concept of talent. Learning with my series, Izzy's Logic of Light and Color, will give you the tools and understanding so you can analyze light and form in reality and bring it to life in your work. Using this simple system I have distilled will help you harness your art to share your ideas as you've always intended. When we are children, we all draw in symbols. Symbols for our house, our hands, the sun, the grass, our pet lobster. As we grow into artists, we must learn to throw away symbols and begin to draw and paint what it is we actually see. And as we grow further, we learn to paint beyond what we see and what is actually there. Until finally we move beyond this and learn to trim away what is actually there so we voice only what we want. With me, you're going to have to buckle in and maybe take some pain meds, because I'm going to rip out your normal person's eyes and replace them with a painter's eyes. I'm going to restructure how you see and how you understand what you're seeing. I'm going to turn you into a painting machine. Truly, anyone can learn to paint realistically if they can both determine what they're seeing or imagining with basic and straightforward rules. Once you understand the mechanics of light, color, and form in reality, you will have the capacity to paint anything you can see or imagine realistically. After that, the real fun begins. Here are some of the ways you can join me and master the logic of light and color. The very first lesson of my series is totally free on my YouTube channel. In that lesson, I give you the 3 primary rules of light that are the very foundation of painting and understanding light itself. If you do nothing else to make your painting mastery easier, at least watch this amazing little lesson. It will do more for your basic understanding of light than just about any tutorial you can find. When you're ready to get deeper and you feel like you have those first rules figured out, allow me to utterly blow your mind with the next episodes available on Gumroad and ArtStation. As we go deeper into the rules underlying the logic of light and color, I carefully and simply explain important and interesting elements. From beginner to pro, there is an amazing amount of information available. Each concept has been distilled into the clearest explanation you're likely to find anywhere. Like episode 2, where we cover the atmospheric effect and how that relates to light, scale, and distance of objects in reality, and how to render it. Or episode 3, where I hand over the ultimate key to controlling value in your paintings. Episodes 5 through 8 are all about rendering materials. Want to understand the logic behind rendering metal, leather, hair, transparency, damn near anything. I even cover the logic behind painting special effects like fire, neon, or lightsabers in later episodes. The lessons just get deeper and more detailed as I build on the foundations covered in preceding episodes. The 10th gives you the most important rule of composition you'll ever learn to keep your images interesting. The next few episodes cover important painting techniques like my edge control ninjutsu or simplification with the large to small system. We dip a toe in color theory, devote a few episodes to finishing full-blown illustrations utilizing the techniques we've learned so far. Some episodes, like the lighting game or Advanced Exercises 1, the shirt, present cheap, valuable, and practical exercises to give you explosive growth in your development. Episodes 22 through 25 cover painting and illustration, just like I do for Magic the Gathering, from assignment and inception to signing the painting at the end. Each one is full of tips, knowledge, everything to make working as an illustrator easier. Did you enjoy learning how to paint basic materials? Metal, wood, and such? I got 3 whole episodes devoted to the intricate logic behind painting different kinds of skin. After that, more lessons devoted to pumping life into your portraits and original methods for accurately drawing faces out of your head. From fundamentals to photo bashing, Gumroad and ArtStation have every lesson I create available for purchase a la carte. But here's an even better way to learn with me. Stay current with my latest lessons on Patreon for the lowest price available. Monthly support gets my student that month's lesson, a critique or paint over of their finished work, a discount code for 25% off the entire Gumroad archive, and access to the Logic of Light and Color Discord community, where we plan future lessons, share knowledge, and learn together as a team. The absolute best method is to join my Patreon classroom at the Student Plus tier, where you'll get everything I just mentioned and a free episode from the archive every month to accelerate your mastery at your own pace. You've decided to take control of your painting and master Izzy's Logic of Light and Color. Now it's up to you to choose the path that's best for you. I'll see you on the flip side. Paint smart, paint sexy.